will be made by Professor Yuichi MORII, professor at the Graduate School of Arts and Sciences of the University of Tokyo. His lecture is entitled Germany and the EU in a World Out of Joint. Then, Professor MORII, please. Thank you very much for the kind introduction. My name is MORII from the University of Tokyo. So I would like to look at Germany and the EU in my presentation. So the title is Germany and the EU in a World Out of Joint. So since the unification or reunification of Germany in 1995, this is the 25th year since then. We should be celebrating. However, the situation right now is very tough, and Germany is right in the middle of this very tough situation. And when we think about that, as I say here in this title, well, 2013, at around the end of that year, Walter Steinmeier, the foreign minister of Germany, used the words world out of joint to describe the situation. He is in Steinmeier from 2005. In the first Merkel administration, he was the foreign minister then. And then from 2009 to 2013, another person took over. But then within the Merkel administration, starting in 2013, he once again became the foreign minister. And one key word that describes him is proactive diplomacy or active foreign policy. So Germany will actively get involved in international affairs. That was his stance. And last fall, he started talking about a world out of joint in lectures and every time he makes speeches. And this year also, when he held lectures at universities in Germany, for example, in October, he went to the Free University of Berlin. And he also said, a world out of joint, what binds us together. That was the title of his talk. And at Lostock University also, he lectured on a similar theme. And this expression in the German language, the words are similar. It describes that the world is falling apart. The words where it came from, it's not really clear, but it seems that he's taken a line out of Hamlet, Shakespeare's Hamlet, to describe the situation in Denmark within the play. And as you see at the bottom of the slide, the world today is now a non-polar world. The US as a superpower, or the Soviet Union as a superpower. In the past, there was a world order based on that, but there is no longer a pole. There is no pole in the world, in economy or in military forces. So now we are living in a non-polar world. And so the world order is in chaos. So in some way, through international cooperation, that order needs to be rebuilt. So the world that is totally out of joint has to be put back together again. So that is what Steinmeier is saying. And what is important then, what the important values will be then is democracy, diversity, and also the relationship with neighboring countries to make it a close and peaceful relationship. Germany, as I said earlier, has faced multiple crises, and we've heard about that during the morning keynote speech. The first crisis that had a big impact was the change in attitude of Russia in Crimea. Russia annexed Crimea, and then in the east, Ukraine also. Russia went into Ukraine in all kinds of ways, and so EU started to place sanctions over Russia because of that. The gas pipeline that Russia has had a close relationship with Germany in the area of economy, but the relationship with Russia worsening has given Germany a very hard situation. And then after the reunification of Germany, the Soviet Union back then and also Russia after that has been quite cooperative. So from Germany's point of view, Russia has been a very important partner. However, after the Ukraine crisis, yes, Russia is an important counterpart. However, the good relationship, as Germany enjoyed in the past, has become very difficult to maintain. That is the new understanding. But still, Russia is a neighbor. That hasn't changed. Therefore, even in crisis, the relationship with Russia has to be maintained one way or another. The second crisis was, as we've heard already in the morning, you have the Greek crisis and the Euro crisis, the Tsipras administration being established, and then the chaos that continued after that. And Germany, as a leader of the Eurozone, had to overcome that crisis. And there were many chaotic situations, but the Greek and Euro crisis has probably gone back to where we were in 2014 and is now stabilized. The third crisis is something that we probably will be hearing more about, and it's the refugee or migration crisis. This hasn't started suddenly. It has been continuing for several years, but from the end of August this year, through Hungary, the Syrian refugees have flooded in a very disorderly way into Germany. And in addition to that, in Paris recently, we have seen the multiple terrorist attacks occurring, and that has created a big impact on Germany and in France, which are the central countries in the EU. And as for Germany, if you look at the domestic scene, well, economically, Germany has been doing very well. In macroeconomic terms, after the reunification, the jobless rate has gone down to the lowest, and the skilled laborers, there was a shortage of skilled laborers, and the economy has been good for Germany. However, and also, as people have been saying that Germany is the sole winner in this situation. However, even with the tense situation in international politics, economy-wise, Germany was quite stable. They were enjoying a good economy. So domestically, the situation was quite calm and peaceful. And that was the situation when suddenly the Volkswagen crisis on emission started. Volkswagen has been cheating on the emission devices, and the diesel regulations were not really met, and that was found out in North America. And of course, Volkswagen is a company that represents Germany. They hire a lot of people. The automotive industry has a lot of peripheral industries attached to that. So if this crisis worsens, the background for the very stable German politics, which was the stable German economy, that could suddenly change, and there is a big concern about that. However, still, the German politics has been quite stable, and the reason is in the center of German politics, there are norms which forms the code of action for Germany, and I would like to emphasize this point. As I said, the crises that I pointed out are directly affecting the values and norms that Germany has, and how will Germany deal with these crises? I believe that is the major point. But these values and norms being pushed out in foreign policies mean that it may pressure other companies, and especially, therefore, Germany has been criticized when dealing with the refugee crisis. For example, there is a book entitled German Risk that was published here in Japan this year. It says that if Germany pushes its own criteria on others and only pursues its dreams, then the actions that Germany takes will be far apart from reality, and this may become a big problem when dealing with other countries. So, politics based on norms and values, in terms of continuation and stability of policies, yes, you will find a very stable and continuous partner in the country. However, the major point I would like to say here is that Germany places a lot of importance on the values and norms written in the laws. But also the EU has its code of action, and the EU, the Convention on the EU also has values and aims written into it. EU is an artificial organization. It is based on a convention. However, Germany also, after World War II, Germany's action norms are based on the basic law or the constitution that was made after World War II. And when we think about this, one example I might take is, why is it that Germany is accepting so many refugees? I would like to look at that reason. Now, this year, the asylum seekers, the refugees that will be accepted in Germany may reach 1 million, whereas the German population is 80 million. But accepting 1 million, when the German the asylum seekers, and with no conditions attached, Germany is accepting so many, and that is because German politics places importance on values and norms. So there are some legal bases in accepting the asylum seekers. One is the Constitution or the basic law. This is based on reflection on the Nazi past, and also the spirit of being tolerant against accepting political persecuted people. And also, Germany has signed the Refugee Convention. And on the next page, you will see the Constitution of Germany. The first article says that the dignity of man is inviolable, and that you have to respect and protect that as a country. And it's not just the German citizens, but Germany places this as something universal. And also Article 16, it says, it talks about the right of asylum, that anybody persecuted on political grounds has the right of asylum. And this is binding the German government. And Chancellor Merkel used Article 1 and 16A when deciding to accept asylum seekers into the country. And of course, you have the EU regulations and EU laws behind this. The Dublin regulation is what Germany bases its actions on.
This means that, as I have just mentioned, the humanitarian point of view, the Hungary in Hungary, there has been an inhumane situation taking place in Hungary, and therefore, judging from the German norms, they cannot really just let the situation be as it is. And therefore, they have to really change the implementation of the Dublin regulations so that they'll be able to accept and receive the asylum seekers. So with this as a background, it is very difficult for the German government to set the cap for the asylum seekers coming into Germany. Of course, there are some objections in domestically, but most of the people support the government decision. My time is really limited, so I can't really go into details, but if you have any questions on these matters, I'd like to explain. And another background is that, as I mentioned, in Germany, the economy is really booming, but they are lacking or they are losing the labor force. They are facing the shortage of labor force. Therefore, in order to maintain the current level of a labor force, they need to receive the laborers from outside of Germany. And this is one of the very important points that we have to understand. And the German society has been going through the big transformation, which has been written in the middle of this slide. In 2000, the nationality law has been revised. In the past, the principle of birthright citizenship has the principle, meaning that if either one of the parents is an immigrant, and even if they don't have any nationality, but for the certain period of time that they reside in Germany, then the children of these parents would be able to receive nationality, German nationality. So this is the revision of the nationality law. In 2005, the German immigration law was established. This is in combination with the integration policy of immigrants. So the law stipulating the asylum seekers or the migrants has been established in 2005, and this really symbolizes the current situation of Germany. And currently, out of the total population, about 9% of the citizens have the foreign nationality. And recently, the Chancellor Merkel herself says that although she is a conservative, but she said Germany is a country of immigrants, and this statement does not really receive so many oppositions in the opinion of the citizens. However, the German government has to pay a lot of financial burden in receiving a lot of asylum seekers, and if the current level continues in the next years and so forth, then they would also maintain a high level of financial burdens. So when we look at the refugee issues for the mid to long term, then we have to first stop we have to really solve the root cause, and then in this situation, as I mentioned, the active diplomacy comes in, and in the Middle East and other areas which has been very unstable. Then in these areas, Germany would be actively engaged through diplomacy, and they would take active policies also. In the second line, it says that the Chancellor Merkel administration has been involved in the Middle East and Syria in the past in order to counterattack the IS. They have provided the weapons and equipment in the Iraq Kurdish autonomous regions, and also provided the military trainings in these areas to counterattack IS. But they have even enhanced their engagement in this area, and also they have to cooperate with Russia in order to stabilize the Middle East. As I mentioned, since the Ukraine crisis, it has been become difficult for Germany to have a good relationship with Russia as they enjoyed before. However, Russia is an indispensable partner, therefore they have to continue their partnership. And as the series of crises been occurring, the Paris attacks has been putting the EU and in particular Germany in going through their ordeals. So it is a trial phase for Germany as well as EU. The France is also important, the member state of EU, and also the France has been long partners. And for the Article 42 of the EU treaty, it said that if a member state is a victim of armed aggressions on its territory, the other member states shall have towards it an obligation of aid and assistance by all the means in their power. So based on this article, the France requested assistance from the member states, in particular Germany, and this article put the humanitarian obligation, and in the Treaty on Functioning of the EU, there is Article 222. This is so-called solidarity clause that is relating to the solidarity among member states. And also this Article 222 states that member state has to provide the aid and assistance to other member state, which is the victim of armed aggression. And the Article 42 requested under this article, Germany has been providing various support. For example, the information collection in Syria to support to France, and also the taking the part of the French involvement in the UK PKO in MORII, Africa, to lessen the burden of France. And when the terrorist attacks took place, the relationship with the France is to be enhanced. However, the German government really focusing on the multifaceted framework. Inside EU, they have to form the agreement, but this is very difficult to do. And in case of the asylum seekers or refugee issues, the eastern countries do not really agree with other member states. For example, in the EU, there are some objections coming from the countries regarding the relocation of the refugees. And the 160,000 refugees relocation is the target. However, only several hundred people have been relocated. It has not been promoted smoothly, and Germany has to take a leadership position in this area, and also the Germany has to persuade other countries which are not really in line with other member states for the relocation. And doing this at the same time, they have to maintain its own framework. Now I have the word Frontex. And Greece and other countries, they had the very difficulty in controlling their borders. They lack capacity to handle these large flux of refugees. So within the EU framework, there is a Frontex. Of course, this is the organization of EU. But when actually implementing the activities, they utilizes the German capabilities. For example, the German fleet would do their missions inside the Mediterranean. So the German active engagement is necessary for Frontex. And the Germany has been accepting asylum seekers based on their ideals. However, because of the huge flux of immigrants, the refugees, there have been various issues caused by it. Therefore, they are going back to more realistic politics. Otherwise, they are afraid of the disintegration of a EU framework. I have written some more details, but as I am out of time, I would like to mention one thing in particular. Inside the Germany, the huge coalition government has been maintained. So the Chancellor Merkel's administration has a huge majority inside, and it has been very stable, and therefore it is not highly likely that there is a change shift in policy. And there's an alternative for Germany. This is a new political party, but according to the public opinion, in the past couple of months, it has been increasing its support. Before summer, it was less than 5%, but currently it is more than 10% of the support from the people. And this AFD is denying or is against receiving the asylum seekers beyond the current level, and they really have to maintain the order inside. So the Alternative for Germany party really focuses on the domestic issues rather than the external issues. And the Begida is the organization, and there's a movement against Islam, and this is also against the asylum seekers. But these would not change the direction of the German politics or policies. And there's an issue for Brexit. Britain may exit from the EU. Therefore, the conditions that would maintain UK in EU has to be finalized, and also persuade the UK to remain as a member state. And in this part, the Germany will play a very important and leading role. The EU's system, or the solidarity among member states, to be maintained. How Germany, which is the central member state, can take the good balance between their ideal and also the solidarity, as well as German profit or interest. And in the past, the Chancellor Merkel or the foreign ministers, they have been taking the very active engagement, but whether or not they will be able to maintain this proactive or active engagement in the future. Now, this is the quote from the Hamlet. However, although the time is out of joint, it is not that Germany would like to become a hegemonic power. It is not willing to take a leadership, but as a good partner, together with other member states, to have a good actions within the framework of EU. They will be the partner, and therefore the balancing the EU solidarity and the German domestic politics, how they can go forward. And in this sense, we have two events that we have to take a keen look at. One is the 2017, the election of German Federal Parliament, and the refugees issues or Syrian issues, whether or not they'll be able to form a consensus within Germany to have a very stable politics. And in March next year, 2016, the Rhineland-Pfalz state would have the state parliament election. In Germany, it is said that there is no successor that can be the rival against Chancellor Merkel. However, in the Rhineland-Pfalz state's election, there is a female politician, Julia Faulkner. If she wins the elections, and then if she becomes the top of the Rhineland-Pfalz state from the CDU, she can be comparable to Chancellor Merkel. And based on the criticism, even if there is a criticism, it is very difficult to change the German politics. However, if this election gives a different situation, they may change the German politics in the future. If you have any questions, I would like to explain the panel discussion. Thank you very much.